Maybe Russian President Vladimir Putin finally felt safe enough to start deploying aircraft to the skies above the Ukrainian battlefield once more. He'd barely used them since the early stages of his invasion, when Ukraine wiped out hundreds of his fighter jets and helicopters. The best estimate is that 370 planes have been shot down, along with 331 helicopters. Or at least that used to be 331 helicopters, but that number has gone up, as Ukraine just annihilated 4 more Russian helicopters in spectacular fashion using one of the most effective weapons. Insane footage from the attack shows that Ukraine just taught Putin a valuable lesson: send helicopters against us and we'll send rockets to meet them. On March 24, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces confirmed they had destroyed 4 Russian helicopters in an attack that focused on the Belgorod Oblast. The region, which lies close to Ukraine's border with Russia and has been a key staging area for Putin's invasion, has been the target of multiple Ukrainian attacks in the past. This latest strike may be among the most effective. It took out 2 Ka-52 choppers along with a pair of Russia's Mi-8 helicopters at a site Russia established in Belgorod to carry out rapid airborne operations and surprise attacks on Ukrainian forces. The enemy once again believed they were unreachable in the deep rear, said Ukraine's Special Operations Forces in a statement. "We have once again proven that nothing is beyond the reach of the Special Operations Forces. We keep working." With an aircraft launch pad Putin's forces established in Belgorod, well camouflaged and concealed from sight, Russia's leader will likely wonder how Ukraine managed to find it in the first place. The only hint he may have is that Ukraine's Special Operations Forces confirmed they carried out the assault in cooperation with Ukraine's artillery, missile and military intelligence forces. So just how exactly did Ukraine pull off this remarkable attack? The answer lies in 5 words: High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, or HIMARS. One of the most important Western-provided additions to Ukraine's growing military arsenal has just come up trumps again by destroying 4 key Russian aerial assets. HIMARS has been a revelation for Ukraine, since the first 20 or so of the American-made multiple launch rocket systems, or MLRS, arrived during the early stages of Russia's invasion. Ukraine has received more since. It was set to receive 18 more as part of a $1 billion aid package sent to the country back in May 2023. By 2024, it had 39 in operation throughout Ukraine, with all being used to take out key Russian aerial and ground assets. Manufactured by Lockheed Martin, HIMARS is marketed as one of the world's most advanced and affordable artillery solutions. It's essentially a crewed vehicle with an MLRS attached to the back. 3 people, a section chief, driver and gunner, control the vehicle, getting it into position so that it can fire its rockets at an enemy target. Don't estimate the importance of the HIMARS vehicle. It makes what could otherwise have been a stationary artillery unit mobile, meaning Russia will always struggle to track and locate a HIMARS in action. Ukraine can transport it to wherever it needs to be, fire off a string of rockets, and then move the HIMARS away from danger before Russia even knows what hit it. That seems to be exactly what it just did outside Belgorod. HIMARS also has an advanced fire control system, or FCS, that enables it to be operated by just a single soldier. The full crew of 3 is ideal, of course, but if some of those crew members are taken out, any remaining can use the FCS to load and unload the system's rockets. That FCS also includes video, keyboard control, a gigabyte of program storage, and global positioning system, ensuring the missiles fired by HIMARS are deadly accurate. Speaking of those missiles, HIMARS can launch the entire range of the MLRS munitions family, according to Army technology. This includes standard MLRS rockets, the extended range version of those rockets, and even the long-range ATTRIBUTIONS missiles Ukraine has been using to target Russian positions inside Russia itself since November 2024. A basic HIMARS M26 rocket can travel up to 19.8 miles before touching down on a target. The extended range variant ups that distance to 27.9 miles while also improving the HIMARS area of influence, which is the radius around the launcher that falls within its operational capabilities, by 107%. Other rockets extend the system's range to 43.4 miles, and if Ukraine uses HIMARS to fire ATTACMS, it can hit targets up to 186 miles away, depending on the block of missiles used. Given that Belgorod is in Russian territory, it seems likely that Ukraine used ATTACMS to take out the 4 helicopters. Alternatively, it may have driven its HIMARS launcher right to the Ukrainian border and used extended range MLRS rockets to devastate Russia's choppers. Speaking of driving, the HIMARS vehicle is just as important a part of the package as the MLRS strapped to its back. Each vehicle weighs 24,000 pounds, which is just over half as much as the 44,000 pound vehicles the US military previously used for its MLRS M270 launchers. That lower weight amounts to greater mobility on the battlefield, allowing HIMARS to move at speeds of up to 52 miles per hour over a maximum distance of 298 miles. If you're wondering why Russia is having such a hard time taking out these powerful artillery systems, you now have your answer: it can't catch them. Add to that some armor that offers protection against small arms fire and artillery shell splinters, and you get a weapon system that Russia may not even be able to take out even if it finds and shells the HIMARS. There's new video footage that gives us the full picture of how Ukraine just used this amazing artillery system. Shared on Reddit, the footage starts with a black and white aerial view of Russia's camouflaged airfield. Markers on the video point out the 4 Russian choppers, which are all near one another. That may have been Russia's first mistake, as HIMARS is capable of firing cluster munitions which detonate and then scatter small munitions, referred to as bomblets, around a small area. If there are multiple targets too close to one another, a single cluster shell can take them all out in one go. After a quick cutaway, the footage resumes. What's likely a Ukrainian first-person view drone hovers over the hidden Russian airfield as a massive explosion sparks up. That was the result of the first HIMARS rocket scoring a direct hit on one of the helicopters. Seconds later, another explosion follows, one more chopper taken out. Then a third. This time you can see the powerful HIMARS rocket streak through the skies briefly before it hits a helicopter. One more explosion and the attack is done. In the space of about 15 seconds, Ukraine destroyed several key Russian assets Putin hoped to use to launch more assaults outside Belgorod. What were those assets exactly? The HIMARS strike took out 2 Ka-52 Alligator choppers and a pair of Mi-8s, both of which are quite formidable. The Ka-52 is an attack helicopter typically crewed by 2 people. It operates in all weather conditions and essentially a twin-seat variant of Russia's Ka-50 attack chopper. The helicopter is fast, maneuverable and capable of taking out several types of targets, including unarmored ground targets, low-speed aerial targets such as drones, and infantry who are on foot. Russia also deploys the chopper as a surveillance platform and has been known to use it as a flying command post when it deploys groups of attack helicopters. Built into the chopper's cockpit is a heads-up display that gives the pilots a view of their surroundings, alongside 4 SMD66 multi-function displays and some image intensifiers. Pilots also have access to a GPS receiver used for navigation. The Ka-52's maximum takeoff weight is around 23,800 pounds, which is high enough to tell you something important. The chopper is loaded with weapons. Specifically, the starboard side of the chopper is home to an MPPU-80 movable gun mount, which holds a 2A42 30mm automatic gun. The helicopter also has 6 wing-mounted external hardpoints onto which Russia can pack other weapons to make the Ka-52 an even more terrifying attacking force. Those weapons can include the VIK-HR, which are anti-tank guided missiles used to decimate Ukraine's mechanized units on the ground. The hardpoints can also hold the B-8V-20 rocket launcher, which fires unguided 80mm rockets for aerial and ground bombardment, along with Russia's Attacker laser guided missiles. More recently, Russia has started equipping the chopper with its Izdilia 305E air-to-surface missiles. They're capable of hitting targets up to 9 miles away, allowing the Ka-52 to hover just out of sight while it delivers laser-guided explosives. Those missiles have seen use during Putin's Ukraine invasion, meaning the destruction of 2 Ka-52s has just removed a potent weapon from Putin's arsenal. Add Igla-V anti-aircraft missiles into that mix and you get a chopper that's versatile enough for Russia to mix and match its loadouts to whatever mission is required. The chopper also has a solid flight ceiling of around 18,000 feet and can cruise at speeds of up to 186 miles per hour over a practical distance of 283 miles. That's more than enough to take off from the Belgorod airbase, reach a Ukrainian target, launch missiles, and then fly back without needing to refuel. At least, it was enough. The Mi-8 is no less impressive, though it serves a very different purpose to the Ka-52. It's a multi-purpose chopper that's capable of carrying up to 12 stretch patients, cluing you into its primary use as a medical evacuation helicopter. If it's not carrying injured soldiers, the chopper has a capacity of 30 troops, allowing Russia to use the aircraft to transport troops quickly to the field. There's also an improved version of the helicopter, dubbed either the Mi-17 HIP or the Mi-8T MB, which is designed to operate at higher altitudes and in hotter weather than the original. It's unclear which specific variants Ukraine took out with its HIMARS, though Russia likely stationed these choppers in its secret Belgorod airfield because they can both transport troops and airlift injured personnel away from the front lines. And both capabilities just disappeared in the space of a 15-second HIMARS strike, meaning Russia can exert less pressure on Ukraine via troop influxes and will lose more soldiers whose lives could have been saved by an Mi-8 evacuation. It's also possible that Ukraine may have destroyed the Mi-8 TV variant of the chopper with its HIMARS attack. If that's the case, it means Ukraine took out an attack helicopter with similar capabilities to the Ka-52. The Mi-8 TV has several built-in 7.62mm machine guns, along with 6 weapon racks that can be packed with Russia's S-5 rockets. These rockets are unguided and fin-stabilized, but they pack enough of an explosive punch to cause serious damage to ground and aerial targets. If Russia chooses not to go for the S-5s, it can also load the attack variant of the Mi-8 with AT-2 Swatter Scorpion anti-tank missiles. The purpose of those missiles is in the name. They can destroy Ukrainian tanks. Interestingly, the Mi-8 TV is also capable of laying minefields. Mines have been a major problem for Ukraine during the Russian invasion. In October 2024, the United Nations Development Programme estimated that as much as 23% of Ukraine's land is now at risk of contamination with landmines and other unexploded ordnances. Clearing those mines will be a huge economic burden for Ukraine, with estimates suggesting that it'll have to spend around $34.6 billion on a clearance operation once the war ends. More worrying from an immediate standpoint is that the mines laid by Russia's Mi-8 TVs can destroy armoured vehicles, kill troops, and in some cases cause the deaths of unsuspecting civilians. Taking out 2 choppers that may be capable of laying mines is a massive win for Ukraine. Add the Ka-52s and you get a HIMARS strike that just took a massive chunk out of Russia's offensive arsenal. In spite of sources reporting the success of Ukraine's recent actions, and even video footage that appears to show 4 direct hits, some are already disputing how impactful the HIMARS strike was. According to Bulgarian military, questions linger about the extent of the damage. Some analysts suggest that at least one Ka-52 may have been damaged rather than completely destroyed, pending independent verification. Russia's Ministry of Defense has also failed to provide any sort of comment on the Ukrainian attack. That's notable in its own right, as Russia's propaganda machine tends to go into overdrive when Ukraine launches a successful attack against its assets on its own territory. The lack of a response this time tells us that Russia may be struggling to spin this into a story where it can claim that it shot down the HIMARS missiles, with any damage being caused by debris. The video footage shows clearly that isn't the case, especially for the 3rd chopper, for which we can see the HIMARS missile make full contact. Bulgarian military also says there are doubts about the operational capacity of the helicopters Ukraine hit. What condition were they in before the strike? Were they even operational? Those questions can't be answered by the footage we've seen so far. However, Russia's lack of comment, Ukraine's celebration of its success, and the extreme unlikelihood that Ukraine would waste HIMARS rockets on choppers that were already permanently grounded likely tells us the real story, that this was a successful strike that will cause major problems for Putin. Consider where the strike took place. The airfield Ukraine hit with its HIMARS was camouflaged and intended to be hidden. Why would Russia use a hidden airfield to store broken helicopters? Far more probable is that it would use that airfield for attack and transport helicopters it could use to fly troops and conduct attacks just over the border before the choppers retreated into cover. But even if the helicopters were grounded before the HIMARS strike, Ukraine has just shown Putin that he can't keep any secrets. Russia's leader wanted to set up a secret airfield in Belgorod. Ukraine's HIMARS strike demonstrates that its military intelligence is accurate enough to find these types of hidden sites and, as importantly, that Ukraine has the weapons it needs to destroy the assets stored at those sites. That's devastating for Putin, as he attempts to use Belgorod to support Russia's pushes towards Kharkiv in Ukraine's northeast. And that brings us to the second reason why Ukraine's HIMARS strike was so devastating. It severely weakens Putin in Belgorod. In August 2024, Ukraine launched its now famous counter-invasion in Kursk. Ukrainian soldiers quickly snatched up around 450 square miles of territory in the region. The invasion was so successful that it forced Putin into bringing in North Korean troops that he's been using since the end of 2024 to try and push Ukraine's soldiers out of Kursk. Putin's counter-offensive is working, slowly, but it's also led to a neighbouring territory becoming weaker as Putin dedicates more of his resources in Kursk. Belgorod is that territory. Newsweek reports that as Ukraine's grasp on Kursk shrinks, it's focusing more on carrying out cross-border attacks in Belgorod. These attacks seem to culminate with a brief excursion over the border on March 18. Russian claims Ukraine sent 200 soldiers and 5 tanks into western Belgorod, focusing specifically on a pair of villages that are just south of Kursk. These are a few reasons Ukraine may have done this. It's likely trying to force Putin to stretch his troops in South Russia, which means diverting soldiers away from Kursk. That puts Putin in a catch-22 situation. He either slows down his assault on the Ukrainian positions in Kursk, which relieves pressure and gives Ukraine a chance to rearm and counter Putin's efforts, or he ignores what's happening in Belgorod and keeps all of his focus on Kursk. That could give Ukraine the chance to carve a pathway through Belgorod, allowing it to set up a supply line between North Ukraine and South Kursk. Plus, any territory Ukraine captures during its Belgorod excursions will only force Russia to expend even more troops in the future. It's a lose-lose scenario for Putin. The March 24 HIMARS strike seems to be in support of Ukraine's Belgorod efforts. By taking out Putin's choppers, it's also limited Russia's ability to attack Ukrainian soldiers who cross the border. Combine that with the loss of the choppers, meaning Russia also loses its ability to stage its own cross-border attacks, and you get a very effective strike. Of course, Russia claims to have destroyed the vast majority of detected forces and assets, which included a Western-made Leopard tank. But we don't know how true that is, and it clearly hasn't stopped Ukraine from targeting Belgorod. Putin may have a new Kursk-sized problem on his hands sooner rather than later. That'll be devastating to Russia's leader as he continues his campaign to reclaim Kursk and take away a key piece of Ukrainian leverage for future peace negotiations. Ukraine's HIMARS strike also reinforces an issue that has plagued Russia since it first invaded Ukraine. Russia simply can't establish aerial dominance against Ukraine. That's been one of the most remarkable aspects of Putin's invasion because it seems, at least on the surface, that Russia has a huge advantage in the aerial department. As global firepower, which ranks 145 nations annually based on their military strength, points out, Russia's air force is massive compared to Ukraine's. Russia has 4,292 aerial assets compared to Ukraine's 324, a difference of almost 4,000 that Putin has failed to make count at any point during his invasion. Ukraine's HIMARS strike shows us why Russia has struggled to obtain aerial dominance. Clever use of aerial defense systems and drones has allowed Ukraine to inflict serious damage on the assets Putin brings close to Ukraine. The situation has gotten so bad for Russia that it's being forced to use some of its most advanced aircraft, such as the Su-34 fighter jet, as little more than aerial bombers that fire glide bombs at Ukraine from hundreds of miles behind the war's front lines. For its part, Ukraine has found increasing success with its growing fleet of aerial drones and its intelligent use of artillery and missile systems such as HIMARS. Putin likely believed that setting up secret airfields close to Ukrainian territory would allow him to finally start using his strong air force to hurt Ukraine. Now, that isn't going to happen. 4 of his best choppers lie in ruins, and Ukraine knows exactly where the Belgorod airfield is. If Putin is dumb enough to send more aircraft to that base, they'll likely face a similar fate to the 4 choppers that Ukraine just wrecked. But what do you think about Ukraine's massive HIMARS strike in Belgorod? Is it a sign that Ukraine is planning to launch a stronger invasion into the region, forcing Putin to either divert forces from Kursk or risk losing territory in Belgorod? Do you think Ukraine has its eyes on other airfields that will soon become HIMARS targets? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to the Military Show for the latest news about Ukraine's devastating attacks against Russia's forces. We're an independent, up-to-date source on military developments around the globe and greatly appreciate your support.